Hello, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Camera. Here we are with episode 119 of Behind the Camera. As always, before we get into today's show, if you would like to follow Behind the Camera across social media, you can find my link tree in the description, which will take you to TikTok, Instagram, X, YouTube, and also has the link to where you can buy my book, Behind the Camera, The Journey So Far. This is available in both paperback and ebook, and is free to read if you have Kindle Unlimited. If you would also like to see more of the behind-the-scenes side of the podcast, you can also support the show on Patreon. For £3 a month, you'll get access to extra content, including a Patreon-exclusive series, your name added to the wall of patrons at the end of every episode of Behind the Camera, and much more. But now, getting into today's conversation. Are you a creative in business? Or even a creator who wants to get into business, but unsure where to begin? Well, my guest today is here to help. Joining me today is founder of Gamify Business, Pape. Paul founded Gamify Business after realizing that standard business advice just wasn't cutting it and found that nothing was translating to a creative mindset. Gamify Business takes the parts of running a company that creative minds may struggle with and translates it into a more comfortable and familiar realm for the creative in terms of gaming, quests, characters, etc. Included in Gamify Business is a link to Paul's free creative class quiz, a 10-minute assessment done in a D&D-esque style which allows you to reveal and understand your business archetype as a creative. Upon completion, you receive a custom report on exactly how your creative brain can run a business. You can find this at www.gamifybusiness.com/quiz. But now, here's the interview. Paul, thank you for joining me on Behind the Camera podcast today. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. How are we doing?
I'm doing really well, Andy. How are you today?
I am doing good, man. I am doing good. So you're an entrepreneur and a strategist where businesses come to you to basically help fix their problems. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's talk about your journey in business and your entrepreneurial journey going from the beginning.
Okay, so most people would say that their entrepreneurial journey is a pretty much a straight line. Mine's more like a bowl of pasta laying on the floor. It goes everywhere. It's a mess. As I mentioned before, before we started recording here, I'm come from theater. So theater is my background. I got degrees in design, and I was in I had just graduated from graduate school with my MFA in design, and I was working with a guy. I was assisting him, and I was asking him. He was at the apex, like the top of the game for a set designer. He had shows on Broadway. He was touring all over the place. I'm like, all right, cool, man. How is it living this life? Because this is the degree I just got. It's what I want to do. And he looked me dead in the face. He goes, it sucks. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I wish you would have told me this 3 years ago. That would have been great. So I promptly stopped doing it. I got the degree and then was like, nah, I'll find something else to do. And so then I designed my first product, which actually kind of revolved around set design. It was a miniature furniture product called Pop Out Furniture. So I designed that one, and it's all laser die cut furniture. So that was my first entrepreneurial gig. So I went and did the trade show circuits and all that, and it was a really successful business. I went from earning 19,000 during my last year of grad school to 250,000 my next year. So I immediately got audited by the IRS because they thought I was selling drugs. So that was great. So then I did that for about 3 years, and then I was at a trade show, and the laser that I had took up a warehouse, because it was back in the day before everybody had them. And that last year, the booth next to me, they were selling personal lasers. And I looked at that and I'm like, well, this business is done. And so I was like, what else can I do? So I happened to move to Omaha, Nebraska, which is where I'm at right now. My wife has family here. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll come back here. And I was like, well, what can I do with myself? I was still doing the pop out furniture thing. And I was like, I don't know. And then a university reached out to me and they're like, hey, would you like to be our professor of design? And I'm like, yeah, sure. What else do I got going on? So I'm like, all right, I'll do that. So I jumped in as the design professor, and I did that for about 3 years. And I loved teaching, thought that was awesome. I hated working for a university. The bureaucracy is bad. And so at that third year, I had a student actually ask me, this is back in 2005, 2006, when the Nintendo Wii came out. I don't know if you remember that platform.
Oh, yeah.
But everybody had a me, like the little avatar guy. And so I had a student of mine ask me, hey, can you make me a me of me and myself and my girlfriend as a gift? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? So I sculpted it for him, cost him $50. And what I didn't know is he had posted it online on a blog called Super Punch. And this is again in the early 2000s. So it was before Facebook. It was before everybody had a blog or Instagram or all that stuff. And so it went viral and people started asking from all over the world, and ended up making over 1,000 tiny avatars like me's. Got 3 cease and desists from Nintendo. It was really nice. Got to work with their lawyers a lot. But then, like during that 3rd year of teaching, I was like, I was making more money doing that on the side and enjoying it rather than doing the work that I was doing as a professor. So I asked my wife if I could quit and try and do this full time. She says, I'll give you a year. I was like, okay. 3 months later, I had another good idea, got $50,000 in 1 month. And she's like, well, I think you have an idea of what you're doing, so just run with it. And that was 20 years ago. But then about 15 years into that, I got bored sitting because I work from home in a studio in my basement, and it's very lonely here. And I don't have a lot of people coming through my basement, as most people don't. And so I was like, okay, so I was like, I want to do something so I can have interaction with people. So I Googled, making art in front of a camera. And this is before OnlyFans, so don't get your minds in the gutter here. So, so it came up with Twitch. So twitch.tv was a platform that it came up with. And what a lot of people don't know is Twitch is mostly gaming, but there's about 20% of it is actually people doing art. And so for 6 years, 5 days a week, for about 6 to 8 hours a day, I would sit in front of 3 cameras and I would do art and I'd talk to people. And what I realized during that time is that there's a lot of creatives out there who have no idea how to make money. They have no idea how to run a business, anything like that. So they constantly ask me advice, like, how did you figure out how to charge? Or where did you find your customers? Or, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And so I explain it to them. And then after a while, I was like, I'm really kind of tired of sitting in front of these cameras all the time, reaching, my 50, 60 people who show up every day. So I'm like, there's got to be a better way. Somebody had mentioned, have you ever thought about doing public speaking? And again, come from a theater background, used to be an actor. I'm like, yeah, I could do that. So I enrolled in some speaking courses and whatnot. And then thought, I could be a consultant. That's something that sounds good. Go to all these different cool creative businesses and help them figure it out. And what I found out was that the traditional way of doing business is boring AF to people. They don't care, especially creative people. They're like, I don't get it. What's a ROAS? What's R? I don't care. And so I was like, okay, weird, but all right. But I had this one company come to me. And they were a 7-figure earner, making over $1 million, but they were netting like $50,000 a year. So it was a huge discrepancy. And they asked me if I could come in and help them with their business so that they could better understand it. It was 3 artists running this business. And so I was out there in Utah talking to them, and I was like, hey, what does everybody do here? And they said, well, we kind of do everything. All of us do everything. I'm like, well, you can't run a business that way. You got to have specific lanes. And so I said, tell me your specific lane. They did. And I'm like, okay. I said, what don't you understand about business? And they're like, we just don't get it. I'm like, okay, how about this? They were gaming nerds. I'm a gaming nerd. So I'm like, how about this? I'll come back tomorrow and we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons Business Edition. I'll just make it up as we go along. And so I did. We came back, we played for about 4 hours. And instead of being like rangers and warriors, they played their role in the business. And instead of fighting dragons and imps, we actually fought things that you're going to encounter in your real business. I just made them into monsters. And we played for about 4 to 6 hours. And at the end of that, the CEO turned to me and he's like, is this what business is? Because if it is, I think I finally understand it. And it seems fun. And I'm like, haha, I have an idea here. So that was kind of like the birth of Gamify Business here, where we translate business into something that people really understand, which is games, because everybody plays games since they're a kid moving up, and understanding that there are rules that you have to play by, but it should be fun, and we just make an adventure out of it. That's kind of the crux of it. So that's where this business came from.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's such an incredible story. And I really do kind of resonate with it as well, because like as a creative, I think you kind of have one mind, and it's like you have a creative mind or you have that kind of logical business mind, but like it is a really fine line to try and integrate both of them together, which is obviously where like what's the crux of Gamify Business is, because I've seen like a lot of like business partnerships before, like online, and people that I know where it's, you would look at them and it's one and the other, and they're very sort of not quite conflicting personalities, but like they both understand their role and know their kind of lanes and stuff. And I noticed as well on Gamify Business that you have a quiz that you can take to see kind of, and I did take that quiz before we started chatting, and I have to say it was one of the coolest sort of coolest laid out things I've ever seen in terms of like something business related. Like
Thanks.
the D&D kind of setup for it. Like I've only ever played D&D once in my life, right? And I did a one shot for a friend's birthday last year. He's a big fan of it. and it was pretty much almost exactly like the sort of character setup sheet that you do beforehand. And it was just, I was awesome. Like, I really, it kind of, it's all these like kind of questions that, like if you get it in like a Google form, you're kind of like, oh my God, I don't wanna, what
Right?
is this crap? Like, but then you see it and it's like, you've got like this companion who's like taking you through these questions. You're like, yeah, you're onto something here. You really, really are. I loved it. So I ended up getting my primary class was a wizard and the secondary
Okay.
was a guide. And I'm kind of like,
Okay. Yeah.
I see that, like, and I think that's a really good way for people who are very, very, very creative minded, but don't have that kind of business savvy, or they don't really know what they're doing, to really kind of get a good idea. So I think it's very, very, it is, I loved it. It was awesome. Do you get like a
Well,
lot of
thank
people
you.
telling you, like giving you feedback about that quiz and taking the quiz?
Yeah, we've had over 2,000 people take the quiz now, and every single one of them is like, "That was fun." I'm like, "Well, that's the point." But the bigger question is do you think that the answer was accurate?
Oh yeah.
So before you get into it, I'm gonna break down what the wizard is, because when we do trade shows, I love to sit behind. I play the barkeep, so I dress in a vest and a whole 9 yards, and we have a backdrop looks a lot like this. We have our beer steins out there, and my wife, who plays the barmaid, she tells everybody and when they do the quiz, they get a card. So you would have gotten a wizard card, and she'll say, "Go up to the barkeep, don't tell him anything about yourself, just hand him the card, and he'll tell you what you do for a living." And so I just sit there all day long, and that's all I do. So for the wizard is actually it's a behind the scenes. It's not a forward facing, which is like people forward kind of career. The wizard has versatility, which is really nice. They eventually will evolve or level up into the bard. So the bard is your ideal companion in this one.
Yeah.
But what the wizard does that's really nice. As opposed to the other behind the scenes people is because the artificer is very much stay in your lane, leave me alone, let me do my job, don't rock the boat kind of person. And then the ranger, which is the third one, is the don't put me in a box at all. I need to free roam. I want to come in, solve a problem, get the heck out, that kind of personality. You're the perfect blend of both. You don't mind being in an uncomfortable situation, like a new environment to solve a problem, but you're also comfortable sitting in a room doing the same repetitive action, not all the time, but you're comfortable in doing that. And so it's kind of a nice blend of the two. Eventually, you go into like I said, you'll level into the bard. Some people are pulled there, like the artificer is pulled into being the sage. But the bard is something that's like, no, I kind of enjoy what I'm doing here, and I've worked in enough environments that I'm very comfortable talking to people, and so you'll kind of elevate out into that forward facing, being more about people and talking with people and stuff. So that's really what the wizard is like. So, how accurate is that to you? What it is that you actually do?
Scarily accurate. Because so the way that I did the way that I did the quiz was I kind of combined it with like my career and also what I'm like aiming to do with this podcast, right? And I kind of like, okay, I took like sort of the aspects of me in work, which is just like, yeah, my work's fine. If I'm ever in a meeting, I'm probably not going to speak up. I'm probably just going to, be like, but like I will help people whoever needs it. But like in terms of decision making, I'm just going to stay out of my lane. If there's a problem to be solved, spend a bit of time on it. Alternatives, that's it. But with my podcast, I want to like help people basically who want to do the same thing. I want to basically get them into it. And if they need help, to come to me, be like a really good point of contact, somebody people can trust to help them really kind of live out a dream that they want to do, or if they give them the confidence to do something that they might not think they need to do. And that's kind of, I combined those sort of two sides of me into it, and that's yeah, like it's everything you said there is pretty much down to a T. I love that.
Now, I will say that just like any kind of personality quiz or whatever, we're all aspects of all of these people, but you did it the correct way, which is thinking about the job that you have, the job that you want, and how to pursue it and then get that. Because I'll get some people who are like, no, I'm not this at all. That used to be my old job. I'm like, well, that must have been what you were thinking of when you took the quiz.
Yeah.
But obviously, we wear all the hats, and so we can be all of those things at once.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you have worked as well with other like brands, like you mentioned Nintendo before. Well, So you worked with Nintendo fans, obviously.
I actually have been hired by Nintendo since then. So yes, I
Yeah.
actually have worked for them.
So maybe the cease and desists were actually kind of the start of a fruitful relationship. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so you've worked with them and Disney and Universal, just to name a few. What sort of capacity did you work with them in?
So I'm known as Santa for nerds, which is a weird title to have, yes. But basically, everybody knows what a Santa is. Everybody knows what a nerd is. I'm just kind of marry the two. So what it's the business called Pape Designs. And what I am is a designer and fabricator of custom collectibles. So if there's something that's out there that doesn't exist that you have thought up that you'd love to have, or if there's something that used to exist that doesn't anymore, but you don't know how to get your hands on it, I'm the guy who can make it for you. So that's what the business is. So when I work with companies like when I work with the Disney, I ended up building a bunch of promotional items for movies that they have coming out.
Mhm.
Working for Universal, I've actually worked on things in the theme parks. I've done some of the things for the movies. I also do promotional stuff for them as well. So it really just depends on what it is that they need. I love working with television because they're always, I work with the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. However you feel about that guy, I don't care. But the job is interesting because they're on topic. They're always like, everything is cutting edge as far as like what's cool. And so when they call me up, they're like, hey, we got this job. We need it in 24 or 48 hours. And it's like ridiculous things. One of them was like an animated horse head to make it look like Shaquille O'Neal and Jimmy are riding horses, but it's gonna be close up. So the horses' heads have to look realistic and they have to move. And they gave me 48 hours to do it, to make two of them. So it's things like that, where it's like, this is impossible. They call Paul, they call Santa, because you ask for whatever you want from Santa and he makes it happen. So that's really what the capacity of those jobs are. That's what I
Yeah.
do for them.
So like in terms of like the design you do, is that like this is not limited to like sort of physical like set design, for example, it's also like digital and or any kind of design that was within
Yeah.
capability?
Yep. I have a full shop down here. I work everything from woodworking and metalworking to 3D printing, laser. I do digital design. I do hand sculpting. You know, you name it, I've probably had my hands up. Right now, I'm working on 22 leather, hand pressed leather journals. Like it really just depends on the job. So I always keep this idea of yes and. It's like, hey, can you do this? Yes, and I'll figure it out. And so I've built a huge skill set, which is really handy for doing all this stuff. But it also really helps with the Gamify business because then when I work with businesses that I may not be necessarily familiar with, I've got the ability to kind of meld myself to it because I've had 20 years of having to do something that doesn't exist. So it's really useful.
Mm. No, of course, of course. And then like being like a creative yourself, what was the sort of light bulb moment for you where it was like, okay, I understand business now from doing X, Y, Z?
So the XYZ was failing, failing, failing is how you learn these things. I love that because I always say like failure is a step, it's not a stop. A lot
Mhm.
of people get they look at oh, I screwed up, I'm never going to do that again. It's like no, learn from it, step up, move to the next thing. And so really it was by continuously goofing up that I really got to the point where I'm like, I think I finally get this. It's also being really observant. I love to learn, and that's been a huge aspect of it. I mean, that's how you can learn all these new skill sets, is because I have like a really good penchant for education. And so, whenever something like that happens, I want to understand it a lot. And so, I'll dig deep into these things. Like, I'm a really big nerd into AI and taxes and just like a random things that you're like, nobody would be interested in this, but I am. So I think that's one of the major things that's really helped me with this and with the creativity aspect of it is just being open to learning new things and never standing still.
Mhm. Yeah, of course, of course. Because something that I've kind of found, like, and this applies to myself and like other creatives that I know, is that basically like idea factories, but then obviously it funnels out and only maybe like a very, very small percentage of these ideas actually kind of become something. But then, of course, that's only just one step into sort of how do you really develop on this. And so, if you have a client, then like, how do you sort of break it down for them in terms of like, okay, you have all of these ideas, and sort of how do you kind of like help them kind of decide and rationalize and make whichever come to life?
Well, what we like to say is the riches are in the niches, so we have to niche down. And coming from a guy who's all over the place, it kind of seems like counterintuitive advice. But the idea is like my niche is literal creativity. It's like just making it up. I don't, and I pretty much stay in that lane. For other people, I ask three questions. So the first one is who are you? That's always the easy one to answer. The second one is, what are you passionate about? Everybody's passionate about something. Okay. Then the third question is the hard one, which is, what do you do different with that passion than anyone else? Okay. Because that's going to be the thing, that's going to be the seed to your business, is understanding what that passion is. Now, I also like to dispel right off the bat that most people are not going to end up being millionaires. Okay. We're just not. And so get that out of your head right away. The idea is not to shoot for being a multimillionaire and ultra rich, it's to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Comfort is something that, we all are striving for. And some people think that millions of dollars equals that, and it doesn't. But what we understand is that if we do something that we're passionate about, and we become successful enough that we are comfortable, then in our lifestyle we don't have to worry about when the next check's coming in and how we're going to pay the bills, how we're going to eat, those kind of things. Then you're a success. That's success right there. And so what we do is we ask those questions, and then we really drill down into it. And the reason that we need to know that one seed is because that point forward, we're always going to be chasing the next, the great grand thing. Is it fame? Is it fortune? It's, whatever that success story is. But we don't want to ever lose sight of what that passion is. Because when you first start off, that passion is the only thing that's fueling you, because you don't have money, you don't have fame. You're just hoping that somebody will like what you're trying to put out there. Eventually, you're going to gain enough momentum that's going to start to feel like that was the easy part. And so you don't have to worry so much about that. Or you want to start gathering more customers. And so you start to, try to appeal to everybody. But the reality is nobody will appeal to anybody, to everybody. It's just not the way it works. And so what I recommend is that you don't do that, because then you start to gray out. You become almost like you become nobody. You just become a ghost in your own machine here, because you're not standing for anything anymore. So what I always say is, when you're pursuing that career, those extra customers, whatever, always look back at that passion, find out what that one thing that you're really after, because those clients are out there. And if you deviate from it, if you gray out, you're going to lose those customers that really loved you for what it was that you're doing. There's a term in the arts called selling out. I'm sure we've all heard it here. That's what that is. Selling out is graying out. It's when you try to appeal to everybody rather than being that cutting edge person or that really cool person who followed that one passion forever.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah. And so say there's an instance where you have a client then, and they know what they're passionate about, but they don't really know how they stand out, but they have an idea, but they don't really know what they do differently or stand out. Then what approach would you take then for your client?
It's all about asking questions. And we create a character sheet. That's one of the first things that we do within Gamify Business. Once you answer those questions, I start to ask you about yourself. And this isn't like a surface answer. It's like my diary kind of answers. We'll dig deep into it. And the reason is because those things that make you who you are, the journey that you've had up until this point, is the reason that you're feeding into this thing that you're passionate about. And so if you don't understand who you are, you're not going to understand that passion enough to be able to figure out what it is that you're trying to, or who you're trying to appeal to, or how you're trying to sell it. And so if you've got this idea of like, yeah, I want to be a painter. I'm like, okay, cool. Show me your breadth of work, or I've invented this product. Okay, show me who the ideal client is and explain it. And if you don't know who that is, typically it's the person in the mirror. It's like, you are your best client because you're making this thing because you loved it. So like, that's who you should be pitching to. It's the same thing, like finding that style. And it really takes an eye. I mean, that's what I've been cultivating for my entire career, is to be able to look at something, kind of distill some information out of it and get it to someone else, which makes me a decent consultant or a coach. And so I ask them a lot of questions about themselves, to the point that they're probably tired of me asking questions. But then, from that, they're basically telling me their history and like the trajectory of where they want the business to go. I had a guy who was fairly successful selling a product, but then when I started talking to him, and I'm like, what is it that you really want to do? And he's like, I want it to be more customized. I want to have like high-end clients, and I want them to have this experience. I'm like, it's not at all what you're doing with your business. Your business is trying to just get into everybody's home. And I said, if you want to do that, that's a complete change of direction. And so let's dig into that more, and let's see if we can redirect where you're at so you can become that person that you wanted to be. And the answers are always, we have the answers. Every single one of us has the answers. It's just got to be pulled out of something.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, because like the reason I ask is because like from like a creative perspective, like, I look at like, I mean, I know a lot of people from like the Twitch space, the live streaming space, and, obviously podcasting space too. And, that kind of creative art is something that a lot more people are trying to make like a career of, trying to be comfortable with. And, it's one of those things that like, you do see people going full time in these things where perhaps they shouldn't, but then also you do see it where it can be on the other side of that, incredibly lucrative. Like it's one of those things, but like you do have like the people who, like say like live streamers, for example. Like I think that's probably like one of the better examples where, you know, you see them kind of like, okay, I want to be able to do this full time. And I kind of feel like with like them, it's kind of like that's as far as they've thought of, is being able to earn enough money to, because
Sure.
it's such a variable thing. Like it's, you never know if one day the algorithm will just be like, nah, let's, move on to something else. And, it's like, do you get like a lot of people in the creative space like that sort of like online space who are trying to sort of like turn it into a career? And what sort of level would they be at in terms of like their business knowledge in terms of that?
Most of them have no idea what they're doing. They try to they'll hire managers who are like it's just shysters who are just trying to steal a piece of the pie without having to do any work. I mean, I've had everybody. Um, the biggest thing that a lot of people, especially streamers, don't understand is that streamers become popular because they, like, let's say they're a Fortnite player, just to
Mm.
throw out a game there, or Dead by Daylight, or whatever game you want to play. Okay, the thing is they became popular because of that. They finally hit that purple check mark. They're doing really well. They got affiliate standing. They're starting to bring in some money. They're earning, a couple grand a month, and they really want to start doing a outreach to get sponsorship and all that. And so they start looking at these bigger pictures. Like the problem is they lose sight of the fact that they are not the especially on platforms like Twitch, they are not the product.
Yeah.
The game is the product. And so the quickest lesson to teach them is on go on stream and play any other game and watch how your viewership tanks. Because the thing is they're not tuning in for you. I don't care how silly you are, how many bells and whistles you got. And let me tell you, I did all of those, every single one of them. Okay. High fives and, bells, all the stupid stuff, things going off in the background every time to earn bits and to get people to subscribe. But the thing is, they're not there for me. They're there for my work. For gamers, they're there for that game.
Mm.
And what they don't understand, it's a lot like professional poker players. Professional poker players hate poker. They won't ever play it for fun because it's a job.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with being a gamer online or being an influencer, because when you're an influencer, you're influencing on a very specific thing. If you don't love that thing, and I mean like uncomfortable love, you're not going to get very far, because at a point you're going to get tired of it. Like, how many hours can you really sit down and play Minecraft and still get enjoyment out of it? But these people are tuning in, and it's new people all the time, so they're expecting to see something new. Or if you go viral because you did some angle on it, you better keep that up, because otherwise your viewership's going to tank. It is a fickle machine, absolutely. And games come into favor and they go out of favor. It's really being able to have an angle on it that you're comfortable with, that you're happy to do continuously, and pursue that, because you are not the brand in that regard. If you're interested in becoming a brand, then you need to set out from the beginning being a variety streamer. Have something else that you do with it. Like I remember being on Twitch, and I loved watching these Grand Theft Auto, like GTA 5 players, but they would role play it. And so you
Yep.
go in and they're doing like role play. They're and it's a soap opera, but they're still playing GTA, and you're like, okay, that's weird. And then you're like, I watched this guy, he sat in an ambulance for 4 hours waiting for someone to need help. And I'm like, what are you doing? So he just shoot the breeze or whatever, but you don't see him, you saw his character. And I'm like, that's interesting. But he could play it all the time because he's like, I really enjoy being an ambulance driver for pretend. Like, you could do that for real. No, I'm good sitting behind my computer screen. So that's really the answer there. It's like, know what it is that you truly want to get out of it. And if you want to be the person who is popular and famous and whatever, then you've got to account for that from the beginning. But we can look at people like Jake Paul, we can look at Mr. Beast, and we can see how much they have to just struggle to stay relevant and entertaining. Like, I remember, I think it was Jake Paul got in trouble because he went to the woods out in Japan that you're not supposed to go into, and he was filming and all that stuff. And it was just like a big to do. And that's because he's like, well, the viewers made me do it. And it's because you run out of content, and it's like,
Yeah.
you've got to keep escalating up and up and up. And that's because he doesn't know who the hell he is. And it's like, if you were just you, then people would be interested in following that, but you're not. You were this event. You were, the guys from Jackass who were constantly hitting themselves and all that. Like, you look at this latest movie they just came out with, it's like all of them have to take a back seat because they've had so many concussions. They get hit again, they're going to die. So it's like, how are you going to stay relevant in this? Well, we're going to bring in some new guys and we're just going to sit and laugh at them. And it's like, that's because that point, it has an expiration date. And so you've got to really know what you're stepping into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. So like, taking that into consideration, and like, when you apply it to like any other business, really, you have a creative who wants to do something with, they can make a business out of whatever it is that their dream is. Is there an element where there has to be like a lot of compromise in terms of like between what their vision is versus what is achievable and will ultimately be more successful in the end of the day?
That's a great question. Like, truly a great question, Andy.
Thank you.
I think that I want to say no. I want to say that if you're truly following that passion, there are people there who will support it. If it's too specific, you're going to either saturate the market or you're going to run out of new customers, and that is a risk that you run. And then you might have to like kind of venture out, like widen the spectrum just a little bit to be able to incorporate more customer bases into that. But I like to teach this thing called the rule of 100 with the Gamify Business, which is you don't need to be viral, you don't need to have millions of views or millions of customers every day, because the reality is that will tank your business. I spoke to a young woman today. She's like, yeah, I had 40,000 sales in 1 month and about broke my business. It's like, yeah, because we can't sustain that. That's not something so like, the rule of 100 says you need 100 consistent customers, and then you'll be comfortable. You'll be good at what you're doing. And those aren't going to be the same customers. But if you narrow down too much, you can run into this issue of oversaturation.
Oh, of course. That's an interesting way to look at it. And I suppose that kind of goes back to the point, about like, if you have 100 customers, that's at the very least comfort. That's like how you are going to be living your life, is very, very comfort. Even if 100 people pay you £3, $3 a month, for example, do you know what I mean? That's 3,000 right there. If I've got that, no,
that's 300.
No, 300.
But like, if they're paying $30, I think it's like 30 bucks.
Yeah, for example, sorry.
Hell, you can't even go get a meal anymore for less than 20, right? It's like, you can't, like, like if you're providing a service or a product, you're looking at like 20, 30 pounds, $30 a month per person.
Yeah.
So that's $3,000. $3,000 is that's not nothing. I mean, that's decent.
No, for
Have
sure.
2 or 3 products, that kind of average about the same. You're doing really well.
For sure. Like, I mean, I can't believe I got that wrong in my head there, but sure, podcasting. I wasn't thinking straight, but like, but even at that though, like, because I think it's one of those things, like, from on like a personal standpoint, like I even said this to my wife, like I was like, this is something that I would love to do full time, but like obviously having a podcast itself doesn't make you money unless you're like sponsored by Spotify or unless you're like an official Spotify podcast or whatever it is, and I don't really care about that. This is a lot of fun, but in terms of what it can be surrounded by, in terms of like, other kind of aspects, I said to my wife, I was like, if I could comfortably be on like maybe 1.25 times my current salary or 1.5 times, then I would, that would be my benchmark to taking this into like a full-time thing. And I was kind of, because it was this sort of thing, it was like, I mean, listen, maybe millions, I'm not going to complain, like, but at the same time, you got to kind of, I think there needs to be like a starting point. Like, when can you, when can you quit your job? When can you take this full time? And like, at the same time, that's when the work really starts, because then, you're this vision is like turned into a reality. And then you find yourself managing a whole other different things that, you never really thought. And then, what do you hire an accountant? Do you like, do you seek management or anything like that? Things like that. Like, obviously it becomes this whole crazy thing. So obviously, the same time of having Gamify Business and doing what you do, you've also written a number of books as well, namely "Quit Selling Your Shit," "The Bard's Guide to Storycraft," "Creative Player's Handbook to Business," "Creative Player's Workbook," and "Game Master's Guide to Business." And is this sort of just written from experience in terms of like things you've learned from doing and sort of what you kind of do with Gamify Business just in print form?
Yes. I mean, I hate to dispel any myths that are out there, but like, I didn't write books to sell books. I wrote books to build authority,
Yeah.
which is a weird thing. And I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. If you've written a book and then you're trying to sell a service that goes with it, you built the book for authority. That's what you're doing it for. You're not trying
Oh
to sell
yeah.
a ton of books. Most authors sell 300 books or less. Just period. Okay, that's how it works. But yes, you're absolutely right. So the first book that I wrote was The Creative Player's Guide to Business. And what that was is it's the player's handbook. Like, I'm the player. Okay, well, how do I do that? Well, that book actually walks you through building a business plan. Okay, it does it in a nice way that sounds more gamey and all that, but at the end of it, you end up with a business plan. Okay, cool. All right, so then but then I realized when I was teaching that book that there was some aspects of it that I touched on, but I'm like, we could go a little bit more in depth on this one. The Game Master's Guide basically is the instruction manual for teachers to teach this. I like to get these books into high schools and colleges so that they can actually teach these as like extracurricular courses.
Yeah.
But a lot of the teachers there, they don't know how to play D&D, they don't know how to tell a story, blah, blah, blah. So that's what that book is for. But the ones that really struck me as being super important are the Quit Selling Your Shit. And what that book is basically about is how creative businesses, if you sell product first, you're going to fail as a business. You're never going to be able to elevate your pricing to where it needs to be to match the skill set that you have that's going on with it. So I always say, quit selling your shit, sell yourself. The problem is a lot of people don't know how to sell themselves. So that's where the Bard's Guide book comes in. The Bard's Guide is basically the instruction manual on how to sell yourself, how to tell a story, because humans love story. And I can tell you metrics, numbers until the cows come home. It doesn't matter. It's not going to help to sell anything. But if I told you how, writing that book actually got me an opportunity to speak to this guy that I was really interested in speaking to because he thought that, my journey was interesting to him because of a story that I told, that's going to resonate a lot more than, hey, I sold 365 books at $20 a piece, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares. So it's being able to tell a good story. So that's what those books evolved out of, was basically the teaching process. The whole point of this is that I want to come in and help your business. I want to help consult or to coach. But I also understand the reality that I'm not $20, And so like, if you want to hire me, I'm going to be a little bit more expensive. And some people are like, I can't afford that, but I don't want to stop momentum. There's a saying that I love to tell my customers, which is, don't plant a garden when you're hungry. Okay. You got to build it. You got to plant your garden early so that when you do get hungry, you've got fruit to pull from. Okay. And so the people who can't afford me right now, they need to start anyways. And so grab a book and be self-led. Because let me tell you, every business that starts out, you're going to do all the work and it's going to be too much work, but you got to still do it because you've got to plant that garden so that by the time it does fruit, you're there in a position that you can do it. Like you're talking about, I'd love to be able to have 1.5, 1.25, 1.5 times my salary at my current job. There's no way that you could quit today and then tomorrow replace that. Exactly. So you're going to have to work in tandem. And the thing is when you work in tandem, that means 2 jobs, guys. Like it's not just quitting and starting another one. So it's like, now I got to do this full-time job that pays my bills. And now I've got to also do this full-time job that doesn't pay me anything yet, but that's the planting of the garden. And so that's the thing that the books help with, is it's self-led. If I can give you a little bit of motivation, awesome. Do you need to spend $10,000, $20,000 for a coach to sit there and rah you? Not unless you're sitting on extra money that you just want to throw away. No, you don't need that. Now, if you get to your place in your business where you're like, okay, I've got everything done, I've tilled the land, I've planted the seeds, but I'm not 100% sure where to go with it, that's when you hire a coach. And they're like, okay, you've got everything laid out, now let me help direct it. And that's really the idea behind it. So books are authority building. They do serve a purpose, but like I get, my books, I'm trying to get them into like bookstores, stuff like that, but it's a weird thing because you walk by, like it's a beautiful book, don't get me wrong, but it looks like a Dungeon Master guide, So like people walk by it, they're like, I'm going to play some D&D. This has nothing to do with D&D. I mean, it's role playing, but it's about business. And so this sits in the business section and people walk by and they're like, that's in the wrong place until they pick it up and look through it. Mm-hmm. But that's why, books like Quit Selling Your Shit are so plain, because that pops off the shelf. The Bard's book sitting next to it. And while they are companion books, if I put them next to each other, people will buy this one day and night before they'll buy that one. I think that's the better book. And it's just because that's marketing and business and blah, blah, blah. So.
Yeah. And it's an interesting point because I think a big problem that a lot of people have is people are very quick to want to sell a product rather than, gain the trust, because it's like you say, you have to sell yourself rather than sell your shit, right? So you have like people will have this shiny thing. It's like, oh shit, I could make some money from this here, but it's not. It's like, well, why should I? Why should I buy this from you? Why can I just buy? Why can't I just buy the same thing? Why does it have to be, you? Why should I trust you? And like, it's funny you say like about books being like an authority thing because like, you know, I think unless like you're a career author, I've met a lot of people who've written books and that is not their main thing. They have written
No.
books because it supplements what they do or complements what they do. It's like a part of them. It helps them get speaking gigs, for example. Like that's been a very, very common one, and like I mean, it's a fun process. Like, I mean, like I think there's so many people who can't say they've written a book. And I think being able to say you've written a book is pretty sick. Does it carry the weight that a lot of people think it does? Absolutely not. I mean, when I wrote my first book, I was just kind of like, I kind of went and I was just like, I mean, I don't know how much I'm going to sell of this. And it sort of was, but like, it was a sort of whole different thing. It was only meant to kind of be a part of the overarching brand, if you want to kind of call it that way. And I think I'm fine with that. So the fact it sold X amount, like about 30 to 50, I don't know exactly, but 30 to 50 within a couple of months, I was just like, that's fine with me. It's always going to be there. It's not I knew I was never going to quit my job over it. It was a few months work and I enjoyed it, the process. I enjoyed getting it out there. I enjoyed the feedback. And that was as fulfilling and as much of a success to me as I could have hoped for a little project like that, while I still have my career. And do you think that, like, a lot of the mistake a lot of people make in their starting out is that they do kind of put too much stock into like the idea as opposed to how they're going to really sell it, kind of thing?
I think it's yes, 100% yes. And the reason that is because our education system is set up to uh, basically reward you for ideation but not reward you for completion, and that's the problem. Is like a lot of us are really good at coming up with these brilliant ideas, and they can be brilliant or not so brilliant. They might sell 10, they might sell 10 million, who knows. But it's the constant ideation which is important, because when you go to work for a company, they want your ideas, because companies don't make ideas, they have employees. And so if you can be a person who's good at ideation, you're going to be very successful. So like I went to school for the arts, and so I was taught the trade of how to be very arty. Okay, cool. When I graduated, they're like, all right, now go be a business. And I'm like, how? And they're like, we don't know, figure it out. And it's very true with most education, unless you go get an MBA where your product, the thing that you're trained on, is being a business. But they don't ideate very well. So that's the problem that we run into. Is we got all these people who've got these great ideas, but they have no idea how to do anything with it. And
Mm-hmm.
so they'll go and buy. That's why the business book industry is huge. It's because people think that I can go pick up this book and it's going to give me all the answers. And the reality is it'll give you the answers to that guy who wrote that book on how he did it, but it's not going to help you do it. My favorite thing is I'll talk to these people who've, oh, I've been at this for 30 years, and it was really easy to get into. And I'm like, yeah, it was 30 years ago, but now the market is saturated. Nobody knows who you are. Everybody's got social media. The pandemic gave birth to billions of consultants and coaches. Everybody's a coach because they survived the pandemic. So I survived it, so I can tell people how to do it. It's like, no, you can't. There's got to be something else there. And so learning how to be a business is something that is absolutely necessary if you've got ideas. The thing is we also love to say, like, this is how business is run. There's a phrase that this is the way it's always been done, and this is how business is done. BS. I'm going to call BS right there, shenanigans. What it is that that's what worked for specific companies,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't work for everybody. And so the whole point of Gamify Business is to say, look, you can play business like it's a game. Oh, you can? I didn't know that was possible. Absolutely. You can do whatever you want with your business. You just have to figure it out. I just like to tell people these are the rules. This is how we play this game. So now jump in the sandbox and play away. Whereas with like business, they're like, this is how we have to do it. You go and apply for your LLC. You go get your, you trademark your name. You get, all this, X, Y, and Z boring. Get your business plan going. Go to the bank. Get some capital. Blah, blah, blah. That's one way to do it. But I could also be an artist who likes to sling paintings and sell them on the street corner. That's still a business plan, not a
Yeah.
great one. but it's a business plan, and so they're just going to do it however they do it. I knew a guy who was a customer of mine. He used to start mowing lawns out of high school because he didn't want to go get a further education. He's like, well, I'm making $50 a lawn. And then eventually it grew up like into a huge business. He'd been doing it for over 35 years, and no formal education, no business education. And he's like, I just went and started putting flyers in people's doors, and they walked outside, went, oh, here's a mowing service. My lawn looks horrible. I'll call this guy up. That's his business plan.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong way to do it, but you have to understand that there's a playbook. Like if he didn't put those flyers out, if he just went and put on ads on television, well, he's going to be wasting a lot of money to a lot of people who don't have lawns. Or if he goes and advertises to businesses, well, they're all, they're renting the fifth floor. They're not the people who own the business. They don't need a lawn, but so it's really understanding your business and how to approach it. And that's really what Gamify Business helps you understand, is it gives you the rule book of your business.
Yeah, definitely. Because like there obviously is an element of, if you're starting a business, you have to kind of plant the seeds to get people to come to you, whether it be something that kind of happens like over time, like putting out flyers, and it's like sort of, you look at that and think, yeah, whatever. And then like about 3 weeks later, you're like, oh yeah, that actually, where is that? As in you're looking through the drawers and you can't find it. And then you're like, yeah, I could do with that right now. And like, but something that kind of comes to mind, in terms of that for me is like the growth of e-commerce and TikTok shop sellers and things like that. Now, like, I mean, I am all for people using that as a platform to sell shit, but at the same time, have a bit of fucking dignity when you do it. Oh my god, I'm sorry, but like, yeah, fair enough. That, you know what I mean, and it is a business model, right? It is, and it's make videos and either get people to click on your affiliate link to buy it, you get a commission, or at the very best, I mean, this is probably more of the result that TikTok itself for these other platforms want from it. Get it into the consumer's head when they see these videos, and then they click on someone's link. They don't care whose, but it's a sort of like, and I mean, it probably goes way deeper, but like, I mean, I don't know how much you might ever see these types of videos, but it's the same cookie cutter kind of stuff where it's like, oh, someone at TikTok's getting fired for this. It's like, shut up. No, they're not. Like, I mean, and it's like, I don't understand how, like, I mean, if there are people who do this full time because they're making shitty content like that, I don't know. But they seem to have the very basics of a plan to kind of do something, and I mean, might cost them their dignity, but
yeah, it's a firework is what that is. It's going to go loud, it's going to go bright, and it's going to go away very quickly.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's what it is. Yeah, there's the other ones that I hate, which is like, oh, I hate this product because now it's on sale. And it's like, you don't hate the product. You're you're shilling this for. I see it all the time. I talked to a woman today though. She went viral on TikTok and she was selling this book, and then she got the evil side of it, which is what a lot of these TikTok shops don't like. I don't know if you follow a lot of the products. They get ripped off. They get knockoffs are starting to be made out of China, out of Alibaba, all these places. They take your product and then they manufacture a cheaper version of it, and then they basically outsell you in the algorithm. So it's a game that you got to play. So whether you're an influencer on there, just selling whatever you're selling, but that what they're selling is themselves. They are the product, and so whatever it is that they're shilling, trying to get you to buy, that's secondary to themselves. But the thing is, they have to constantly keep this up. Otherwise, like, you can't take a 2-week vacation. You take a 2-week vacation without front loading your algorithm there, you're going to be out of a job because they're going to forget who you are. So you've got to stay relevant enough. And the positive is that it allows a lot of regular people to become celebrities, or at least popular enough that they can supplement their income or just do that full time. I think it's great for that aspect of it. Is it sketchy? Do they give me the heebie-jeebies? Absolutely. Is it sustainable? Not really. But it works for them right now. Great.
Yeah. Yeah, because like, I mean, with a lot of like, okay, so because with a lot of these like types of people and stuff like that, and a lot of kind of, especially like online businesses, because online businesses are very, very volatile. It's like a very volatile market because of how accessible it is to like, absolutely anybody. Like whenever you're working with a client, do you also like have to kind of measure potential longevity of a business, or is it kind of like, because it can be like a bit of a minefield, because obviously people are coming to you there, they really want to get this off the ground, but then where does your kind of duty of care end in terms of like helping people with their businesses?
Well, so I think it's interesting because a lot of people think that if I come up with a brilliant idea of a business, that's me until I die. And the reality is nope, it's yours until you decide to do something different.
Mhm.
And so with those people, the question isn't, is this the product? How long, what's the longevity of this? There's a lifespan of everything. And so it's like like my pop out furniture, it was 3 years. And then people started getting their own lasers in their basement. They're like, we don't need you anymore. Sell us the design, don't sell us the product. Okay, cool. Let's go that route. When 3D printers came out and people started designing things and they just printed at home, my hand sculpting business took a tank. It's like, oh, okay, well, you can just print this at home for pennies on the dollar. It's not as good, but people don't give a shit about how good it
No.
is. They just want it. And so the question is more about, it's not about longevity of the product, it's longevity about the person. It's like, is this what you want to be doing? And the answer can be no. You just have to be able to understand where you want to switch lanes at. So always ask, what's the exit strategy? What's the point of this entire thing? Because it's never going to, like, Pape Designs, my design fabrication studio, 20, 25 years is pretty much it, because I can't keep making all the things all the time because I'm getting older, and like the chemicals are, I'm just building up a cancer tolerance. It's like eventually I gotta get out, otherwise it's going to take me out. And so I'm like, what else can I do? Well, I can use all that experience to start a consulting business. Well, I don't want to be 80 years old getting on a plane, flying out to some young upstart's business and trying to convince them that they need me to coach them through their business. That's not sustainable either. So, like, what's the next thing? Everything has a lifespan.
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of people don't want to think about it because they're like, oh, I'm going to become multi-millionaire. This business is going to blow up. Cool. Well, the only way that you really make that kind of fat bank on is if you sell it. It's like when it gets acquired by someone else, or if you open it up to public, and then eventually you get bought out. I mean, look at the guys who started Tesla. They don't even work there anymore, but they're comfortable in their living, but
Yeah.
it's like these things, it's like there's a lifespan to it. So when somebody's doing something like that, selling stuff on the side, or they got this great idea, we just ask them, how do you want this to end? It doesn't have to be today. It's like, what's the plan? And have
Mhm.
one. Don't ignore it. Blinders help no one. So
No. It's because it's interesting, like when you look at the sort of differences between somebody who's like employed versus self-employed, the
mhm.
what they have to think of, like, for I mean, me being, employed, working a 9 to 5, like, I mean, I think the only things I have to think about are turning up for work on time and, praying that there's no redundancies anytime soon. Like, and it's really just kind of the bulk of it, to be quite honest with you. Is my salary hitting my bank account on the right day? Yeah, great. But you know, like being self-employed, your own business, like it is such a volatile thing. Like, I mean, it very much is a case where like tomorrow isn't promised, and that's your kind of everyday, and that's kind of
Yeah.
it really just puts it into perspective, I think. And I mean, but I think it's I can see why it's the dream for a lot of people, being able to just work for themselves or work with a friend and just kind of do what they want to do. Because, I mean, like, like for me personally, I think it's like, it's okay to be kind of, if you love your job, if you love your job, then great, more power to you. If you're content with your job and it kind of allows you to do other things and, follow your passion and stuff, sometimes that's almost even better.
Mhm.
But if you really hate your job, then that should be the thing that's kind of lighting a fire under your arse to really kind of, you know, ask yourself that question: what are you passionate about? And really kind of, that should be the kind of evolutionary thing for you in terms of what you want to really do. And I think we've all been there. I think everybody's had a job that they've hated and almost felt stuck there, but that's not the case by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I think that a lot of people, when it comes to like a real time employment, I mean, like between being self employed and, I'm sorry about that. The problem about being self employed and full time employed by someone else is that when you're employed by someone else, your life is a flat line. It's not progressing up, or if it does, it's very slight because you get like a cost of living increase. You get all these things.
Yeah.
It's a slow build, but it's not going to give you any highs and lows. You might get a bonus every once in a while. You're like, yay, but it's a blip in the sereneness of your life. When you work for yourself, it's an EKG, But let me tell you, the low lows suck, but the high highs are euphoric.
For
Okay. Whereas
sure.
if I just went every single day to the same job and I know I've got dependable paychecks, my wife and I are example of this. She has a full-time job. My life gives her anxiety. She's like, I cannot handle the fact that I don't know if I'm getting paid. And I'm like, but that's just the nature of this business. I couldn't sit at the same job every day. I would rather lay down in the middle of heavy traffic. It would just not be, it's not my thing. And so like that bores me to no end. And so um it really just depends on what your mindset is. And there are
Mm,
like, if we get into like the physicality of things, there are actually two types of brains. There's a brain that thrives on dependability, and there is a brain that thrives on unpredictability. And so it's you've got to know who you are, and if you don't know, try the other one for a second. You'll know really quickly. If you have to go out there and hustle every day for your work, or you're not going to eat, and that gives you palpitations, then that's not the job for you. Go find a steady employment somewhere.
yeah.
But my brain hates the fact that I could work because I know I'm a good worker. I'm a hard worker, and I've obviously proven this to myself for dozens of years here. But the thing is I would hate to work that hard for someone else to earn all the money and credit. Like
Yeah.
that drives me crazy. But I know people, like I have a good friend of mine. He's like, oh, I just helped our business acquire an additional $4 million this quarter. I'm like, that's awesome. How much of that did they give you? He's like, well, they bought me some pizza. I'm like, man alive, I would, nuh-uh, I'm out. I'm like, you just did all that for them. They're rolling in the bank and you got pizza. Like, I can go get you pizza tomorrow, man. Like, what? Like, so it's you just, but he's comfortable there. He doesn't want to do what I do because
Yeah.
it fills him with anxiety. So you just got to know where you lay.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and I think there's a sort of distinct difference in terms of disillusionment between, employment and self-employment, where I think, if you're employed, there is, I think, a bigger element. And obviously, it's very dependent, it's dependent, could be like a case by case basis. But like in terms of when you're employed, like I had this for, years. And whenever I started my career, I had this for years. And there was this like disillusionment where like, there was that the constant upwards progression that your bonuses were going to go a long way. And I think it was like the last bonus I got, I just kind of laughed because it was like, yeah, okay, cool.
That's where I'm at.
And I kind of like that disillusionment. I just, because it's the sort of like the disappointment you get, like, in your employment, in terms of if you don't get that promotion, you don't get that pay rise, you don't get a good bonus. It's very much kind of like, right, well, what are you gonna, the only things that you can do differently are very much within the parameters of your job, and that is
Yep.
so limiting. Whereas if you're like, you run your own business, it's like, okay, we tried something else, it didn't work this month. Do we go back to what worked, or do we try something new? Do we do this? Do we completely rebrand? It's like a sort of a playground of opportunity, really. And of course, yes, with that comes risk, but at the same time, you're doing it for you because you can. And like, if you hated it, then like you say, you would go and just go get one of those jobs like that. You could go and get like a sort of 9 to 5, and it's yeah, like I can see why people do it. Maybe I'll get there one day.
I doubt it. People don't change. They just become more, they understand themselves better is what happens.
Yeah, see, that's done. I agree, because I think that's where I'm at now, because I'm at the point where I'm very, very content with what I do. I have kind of, as soon as I kind of lost that disillusion, I was just like, you know what? I'm happy with it. What I do. My job's fine. It keeps me comfortable. I get to do this, and I get to work on the things I want to do further
Yeah.
to this. And right now, that's perfect. Right now, that is just enough, and I wouldn't have that
Yep.
any other way. So
It's only when you want it to be more and it can't,
yeah,
that's when the struggle appears.
I agree.
Like if you have a bunch of kids and you're like, well, they're 10 to 20 pounds or 20,000 pounds a year each. I'm not earning that extra money. Well, how do I get that extra money? And that's when people start doing secondary jobs or third, or they get disillusioned with their main job. They're like, this used to be everything. This was fulfilling,
Yeah.
but now it doesn't meet that need. And when you go to your boss and you're like, I need more money, and they're like, good luck, like get another job. There's no more money to give you. Blah blah blah. That's where that disillusionment really comes in, where people get really upset with their current standing. And if that's the case, go find another job. It's not as easy as go find another job, but if that is truly what it is, don't quit your job before you find the other job. How about that piece of advice? Go get the other one lined up first and then quit your other job. But those are choices that you have to make, and it will be difficult, and it will be upsetting, and you will have anxiety because that's not what you're used to. Whereas if you take me and you're like, go get a new job tomorrow, I'm like, okay. I'll go there, I'm gonna go get that new job tomorrow. All right. Can I quit the day after because I'm tired of it?
Yep. So. Brilliant stuff. But Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Behind the Camera podcast. Thank you for your time. Thank you for such an amazing discussion. I would just like to give you the floor just to let the listeners know where they can find you, if you'd like to plug Gamify Business and anything else that you would like to show.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Andy. This has been an absolute treat. So if you'd like to get a hold of me or just check out the product that I sell here, go to gamifybusiness.com. That's GAMIFY business.com. And if you go to gamifybusiness.com/quiz, you can take the quiz that Andy was talking about earlier and learn about your business personality. You don't sign up for anything. I don't require you to upsell, nothing like that. You get it for free. I just want people to know who they are when they get into business. All of my books are there. I've got my own podcast, which is Gamify Business Tavern Tales, where you actually get interviewed by the bard, who is the barkeep, who is the guy who runs this whole thing. He's also game master. It's me. But it's actually an interesting conversation that you get to have, and you get to explore what it's like to live in a fantasy world that is your business. So go check that one out as well. So, thank you.
Amazing stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely go check out Gamify Business, check out Paul's other works, and take the quiz. Take the quiz as well, because it's a lot of fun and it really is quite eye-opening. And you might be expecting the results that you get, but you have fun while you're doing it. But once again, Paul, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Same. Thank you.
And there you have it for episode 119 of Behind the Camera. Huge thank you to Paul Pape for being today's guest, for his business insights and a great conversation. Be sure to check out Gamify Business, link in the description. As always, thank you to all patrons for your support. You're all truly appreciated. And of course, if you would like to stay connected with Behind the Camera, check out my link tree in the description for all socials and for my book, Behind the Camera, The Journey So Far. Thank you for listening, for the support, and for being part of the journey. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.